my name is Sarah Lustig and I am a spiritual healer and a licensed therapist. It's so nice for you to join me today. Thank you so much. My topic today is reparenting and why reparenting is important, what it is, how it fits into your life. So welcome for those of you who are here with us tonight. I'm excited to have you. So reparenting is really about the act of taking care of ourselves and how we take care of ourselves as we are adults. We, learned how to take care of ourselves as children based on what we saw in our parents. And sometimes the things that we saw were good, positive communication or loving affection or tones with each other. But if you grew up in a dysfunctional household or with childhood trauma, especially if that was, perpetrated by your parents, your parents were the ones who were responsible for that trauma, then you're going to need reparenting. And most of us need reparenting, even if you had a good childhood, even if you had good parents, parents who loved you and parents who were supportive, you might still need reparenting because your parents taught you things based on their model and what they were taught from their parents. And so even though that model might have been loving, it might have still been lacking in certain ways. So, for example, if a generation came from World War II, where there was, scarcity of resources, when you couldn't get fresh eggs and milk and butter and cheese and things like that, if they had, you had grandparents from that time, that might have impacted your parents and how they understood things. And that impacted how you then received parenting from them, from these previous generations. So reparenting is really about understanding the different kind of behavioral cycles, emotional cycles, trauma cycles that get passed down through families in time, and how we can, as our present adult selves fully connected, how we can really show up for all parts of ourselves and understand that, these behavioral cycles that we might have been modeled by our parents ultimately don't resonate with who we are. And so reparenting, again, it doesn't mean that you had bad parents, but it might just mean that they taught you things that ultimately aren't helping or serving you today, that are maybe more survival-based behaviors instead of behaviors that are going to help you actually thrive in life. And so, one of the biggest issues that many adult women face from their childhood was not being seen, not being heard, not being understood or accepted for who they were. Especially if you are a highly sensitive child, if you were deeply feeling, and if you were highly attuned to what was going on around you. That might have been very threatening to the adults around you who maybe wanted to dissociate or wanted to not be aware of those things that you were bringing up. And so they might have then kind of pushed you away or pushed you down, dismissed your ideas, dismissed your dreams, dismissed the things that were in your imagination or the things that you wanted to share with people, art projects, or, music that you created, things like that. So we really want to honor those different parts of us and acknowledge the wounds that we had in childhood and how those may be impacting us today. So understanding that reparenting is really made up of three main parts. And that's understanding our inner child and how to work with our inner child, this beautiful part. Understanding remothering and how we remother ourselves. And this is what a lot of spiritual coaches, especially female spiritual coaches, tend to focus on, is remothering, which is beautiful and very necessary and very important. But then we also have refathering. And this isn't something that I hear as much about, and is also really important and necessary for taking care of ourselves fully and being able to show up for ourselves fully, especially if you are a woman who experienced wounds with your father. If you have trauma with your father, then you definitely want to be able to be aware of refathering and how you can be doing that in your own life and reclaiming this part of your lineage and of your history. And so understanding kind of the different energies of these and how to work with these energies. The inner child is more of a physical energy. This is really in its most empowered and expanded state. The inner child is our playful part. It's our curious part. It's our lighthearted, imaginative part. It's our, curious, fun part that wants to play and wants to explore and wants to have a good time. It's a beautiful part. And that, especially in the chaotic world that we're living in, so many people are disconnected from their inner child and the magic of their inner child, and how this part can really, just be so meaningful to reconnect with, so that we aren't taking life so seriously, so that we do remember that life is worth living and there's still so many beautiful things with life. Being able to call on the wisdom of the inner child and access that in our healing is really, really important for being able to really, be this kind of sacred rebel where we recall our joy and we reclaim our joy and our fun, and knowing that that is just as much a, kind of activism as like going to protests and things like that. Like, being in our joy is super important for being able to fight these wounded systems that exist. So understanding that the empowered parts of the inner child, and then also understanding kind of the disempowered or the wounded parts of the inner child. And these can show up as emotional tantrums, having meltdowns, dissociating, feeling really fearful, being anxious, highly anxious, disconnected from our body, feeling very much stuck in the victim mode, feeling very helpless, and not being able to, manage our emotions, not being able to be present with what's happening, our sensations in our body. So the inner child tends to disconnect and tends to kind of numb or dissociate from what's happening because they're so afraid. And so we want to be able to heal those wounded parts of the inner child and connect back with the most empowered, beautiful parts of the inner child. And then we have remothering. Remothering is really more about our emotional health and our heart health, being in our heart center. These are the aspects of us that are about nurturing, that are about creating a calm or cozy environment for ourselves to thrive in. These are parts that are about, having grace for ourselves. These are more of the kind of creative parts, or the kind of flowing energy that we might call upon for manifesting, or, different parts of our healing journey. Getting to know ourselves through this lens of remothering, and how we can take care of ourselves, how we can show up with softness and tenderness, and really show compassion for ourselves, for those around us, for our wounded parts, and how we've acted from those wounded parts, whether we hurt ourselves or whether we hurt other people. And really having grace and forgiveness for ourselves and others from when we acted in those wounded places. When we're in the disempowered feminine, and this happens to all of us, we're constantly kind of falling in and out of these empowered and disempowered states. And so when we're in the disempowered state of the mother, we can be self-sacrificing. We kind of play that martyr energy where we are trying to go in and rescue everybody, or fix everybody, or minimize everybody's emotions, and trying to make everybody comfortable and safe instead of like just making space for what might be showing up. We can be very self-abandoning, where we prioritize other people and we don't say no, or we don't put ourselves first, and we don't tend to our own needs in a way that leads to burnout and leads to us feeling overwhelmed. This energy can be very cold or very cruel. It's very unkind, very kind of cutting energy, emotionally cutting. And this energy can be very much kind of the damsel in distress energy, where we are looking for somebody else to save us and rescue us and, just like swoop in and make it all better for us, instead of knowing that we can do that for ourselves, and being able to come back to our own inner power and the trust and faith in ourselves to be able to manage the difficulties that we might be experiencing in life, the different challenges that might be showing up. So remothering is really about how we show up with fierce love. Remothering is not just like soft and gentle all the time, although it is those things. It's also fierce. It's also kind of that lioness energy of like not letting people push us down, not letting people treat us like doormats, and being able to stand up for ourselves and set our boundaries. knowing that we are justified in those things and it's okay to ask for what we need in order to thrive in our relationships. And then we also have the energy of refathering. And this is the piece that a lot of people miss. This is the energy that gives structure to our life and gives, healthy routine and healthy balance. Again, if you grew up with a really domineering father or really rigid father, black and white parents who, you were either good or you were bad. Either you had to get an A or you were a total failure. Where there were all these rules of you had to be exactly perfect and right or else you were not good enough. That is something that needs to be healed through refathering. This is energy that is really, about self-supporting and being interdependent. So being able to be a completely dependent person, not codependent on other people, but also be connected to other people, to be able to still be open to our hearts, and that's where the remothering comes in, but from a fully embodied and confident, powerful way, connected to ourselves fully, so that we know who is safe to move towards and who is safe to connect to, and we can trust ourselves in the kind of relationships that we're attracting in our lives, in our friendships, our romantic relationships. So, the refathering is really about stepping back into our confidence and being present with ourselves, getting back into that grounded energy, being able to protect ourselves and cleanse our energy every day and taking care of ourselves. When we are in the disempowered masculine state, we tend to be very critical, very judgmental, very harsh, either on ourselves or on other people. We tend to be very quick to anger or very aggressive, very frustrated, easily just upset, easily, blaming other people or blaming ourselves. This energy tends to be insecure, where we don't feel comfortable and confident in who we are. We don't recognize our worth. You don't see how beautiful and talented you are, even though other people are giving you that feedback. You're dismissive of that feedback and, no, I need to be doing this better. I need to be doing that. You're really focused on what you're not doing well enough of, instead of all the things that you're doing tremendously well every single day, and being able to celebrate those small wins. It's like every time you have something that you do well, it's like you acknowledge it for 2 seconds and then you're off on something else, and not just taking the time to really acknowledge all that you do and how hard you're working to create a better life for yourself, for your future lineage, for the people around you. I mean, that's tremendous. So being able to just really honor that. The wounded masculine, this wounded, father energy can be, can have a lot of shame, can often feel like we are lost, or we don't have a compass. We're disconnected from our inner compass and that sense of direction in our life. We don't know where to go. We don't know which decision is the right decision. We feel overwhelmed making decisions. We don't trust ourselves to make decisions. It can be often kind of the energy of the perpetrator or the abuser, somebody who is, raising their voice or is trying to cut other people down. So just recognizing that energy, if that is showing up in your life, and not being hard on yourself if you are acting from these wounded places. It's normal. Like I said, we're always on a continuum where we're kind of in and out of these empowered states versus more victim states. So just recognizing that you might need reparenting if you had a wounded relationship with your parents, if you grew up in a dysfunctional childhood home where there's a lot of chaos, if your parents struggled with mental health issues or challenges, if there was addiction in your family, if there was an absent parent, either physically or emotionally absent, or if there was a parent who cheated, there was lots of fighting between your parents, one of your parents left. These are all, elements of dysfunctional family homes that absolutely impact the conditioning that we experience as we grow up and become adults. So, recognizing that you were not to blame for the ways that you learned to cope in childhood, and that you were doing the absolute best that you could. In many ways, your parents were doing the best that they could with the model and the resources that they had available to them at the time. And so just recognizing your parents as their own wounded people and having grace for yourself. And this is, so often the sensitive women that I work with who've had these childhood experiences, they are so incredibly strong, but they don't realize their strength because they are acting from more of these wounded places, and they're not able to access yet those empowered places. And then through the work that we're able to do together, they get to those confident places again, where they feel comfortable with themselves, they feel comfortable going out into the world, they feel confident in speaking their truth and speaking, with their voice, and knowing that the right people will hear them, will respect them, will honor them, and knowing that ultimately they can do that for themselves, and helping you find that for yourself in your life. Reparenting is such beautiful, intricate healing work that is really life-changing, because it's about wholeness. It's about ultimately going inward to reconnect with our own soul wisdom, our own greatest self. That's not separate from us. That's not, a mother figure, a father figure. It is within us that wisdom comes from. And when we come from this fully embodied place of heart, mind, body, spirit, then our healing takes place just like so fast. It's crazy. I'm so passionate about this work because of just the depth of transformation that can take place from wounding into empowerment, into feeling really comfortable and confident, into loving and accepting yourself fully. So I hope that gave you some insight into what reparenting is and how this healing work can fit into your life, in your journey. I honor wherever you are in this now moment on that journey, and just know it is exactly where you need to be. It's beautiful. It's all unfolding exactly how it needs to. And just spending some time today really putting the trust in that, and putting the trust in this message that you receive whenever you might watch this, whether it's today or whether you watch it at a later time. If you have any other questions about this topic, send me a DM, or if you're interested in working with me and doing this beautiful inner work for yourself, also send me a DM. I'd love to hear from you and see how I can help you just show up more fully yourself, more fully embodied, more whole, and in harmony and balance with who you truly are at your core, at your essence, the life that you want to build for yourself, the kind of relationships that you want to have, whether it's relationships that are really peaceful or whether it's relationships that are really nourishing, whatever that means for you. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a beautiful evening.